Most people often forget that Wolverine started his journey as a drifter, a deeply damaged person trying his best to find where he belongs. The MCU is yet to introduce and reintroduce a whole bunch of new characters in the upcoming years, with a lot of them being fan favorites. Before we take a look into ways they could introduce the Wolverine, let's talk about how we've been hinted at his existence for a while now. Firstly, She-Hulk confirms Wolverine's existence. While Marvel hasn't specifically brought forward the X-Men yet, it has done its part by introducing the first mutant ever, Professor X, from an alternate reality. Considering that, Wolverine might not be that far behind. With what we've seen in an Easter egg from She-Hulk, he already does exist in that universe. The mutant has been seen fighting with his claws. While our main character is browsing the web, on the side come up two related articles, with one of them asking about why there's a giant statue sticking out of the ocean, hinting back to the end of Eternals. Right above this is an article called "Man Fights with Metal Claws in Bar Brawl," and we all know who they're talking about. While it could be Romulus, the leader of Lupins, it's more than likely to be Wolverine. Another Easter egg was dropped in another Disney Plus show depicting a famous location in the X-Men universe called Madripoor. But more importantly, it showed the Princess Bar, which is famous for being Wolverine's favorite watering hole. Could it be that he fought there with his claws out? Multiple shows by Disney Plus in the MCU continue to hint toward the X-Men a lot, though in very subtle ways, with Ms. Marvel being called a mutant canonically, shifting her status from a human and meaning that there's officially a mutant already in the MCU. Moreover, did Marvel already set up Wolverine in the MCU? It's pretty clear that the MCU has always had mutants. It's not that hard of an assumption to make, especially since the first Captain America movie had a reference to a superhuman research center at Alamogordo, New Mexico, which is famous for experiments on mutants in the comics. This could prove to be more than just a subtle X-Men setup for the franchise, since it also paves the path for Wolverine, specifically because the comics hint that scientists from this research facility are the same ones that end up working on the Weapon X project, which put in unbreakable adamantium right into his bones. Though much more recently, with MCU adding its shows on Netflix back to its canon, and with Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio coming back on screens as Daredevil and the Kingpin, it brings back an element from the third season of Daredevil, where Dr. Oyama tries to fix Bullseye's broken back with Cognium Steel Reinforcing Framework. After taking a deeper dive into Wolverine lore, it turns out Dr. Oyama is also known as Lord Darkwind, the very same doctor who managed to figure out just how adamantium could be bound to human bones. His research was then stolen by the Weapon X project, and he was never able to create it again. With him entering into the mainstream canon, Wolverine doesn't seem too far ahead. Though there are still a lot of other ways he's introduced in the comics, the most famous of those would be his epic battle with the Hulk, him as part of the X-Men, and as a lone wolf. Furthermore, introducing him facing off against the Hulk. Fans of the comics first met the character back in 1974. He came on as an antagonist in The Incredible Hulk number 181. In this particular issue, he can be seen roaming around in the wilderness, searching for the berserk green monster, and ends up fighting both him and the Wendigo. This could turn out to be the case in MCU's introduction to the hero, since they already have Mark Ruffalo as Hulk in place, though its story would have to condense the entire comic series into just 2 to 3 hours, which might make it shallow and underwhelming, while much larger themes would have to be introduced to explain his origin. It could also break away from the comic and have both him and the Hulk work as allies to beat down a villain, and still would be paying tribute to their truce at the end of it. Though it would be really interesting to see what Bruce might have been up to before he gained full control over the Hulk. We could even see him wandering the woods in search of a purpose, much like Wolverine, after his encounter with so much death because of the Thanos incident. Additionally, part of the X-Men, a fairly common theme in all the Wolverine and X-Men movies we've seen so far, is Wolverine being a lone wolf who starts off living out of a campsite with a gas heater and his drawers hung up with cords. But just a short fight with Sabretooth later, he's now at Xavier's mansion, getting oriented to the place and listening to Chuck talk about his dream of having peace between humans and mutants. A similar entrance for the character, but tweaked, could prove to be an amazing experience. He's already part of the X-Men. MCU and Sony did something similar with Spider-Man, and it just might be the way to go with him as well. We're already getting a chance at meeting the team again in MCU's merger reboot. Why not already have him be a part of it? It's surely the least controversial way to add the character, but if we're being honest, it does come off as very lazy, though still welcome. The character could easily be his usual self, a lost soul who's been forced into wars and spy agencies because of his mutations. Furthermore, it's also interesting to note that in The Falcon, the Winter Soldier, they even introduced one of his favorite places, where he feels much more at home than at the X-Mansion. mansion. In the comics, he's the owner of this place, called Princess Bar at Madripoor, where he hides from everyone's attention under his alias Patch. Similarly, another solo Wolverine? While both of our previously mentioned suggestions may be good, the best way to add him to MCU's roster would be in his own movie, which could also act as a way to add the mutants into Marvel's universe as well. Not just that, it would be much easier to keep up with, since there wouldn't be as many characters as Xavier's entire school. We could once again get to see him make his way through all of his struggles while trying to put together his past. While we already saw that in older films, it was still intertwined with a lot of stories about other mutants as well. A movie focused purely on him and his story might turn into just the kind of refreshing take we need for his reintroduction on screen. Though it wouldn't be like Marvel to make a movie that doesn't center around the planet or the universe's destruction. A street-level movie about him and his worst enemies, where he's fighting for justice, survival, and answers would be one to watch. However, even they know that they can't mess this one up like some of their recent movies, and Wolverine's introduction has to be perfect, or as close to perfect as they can get. Finally, Wolverine already existing just makes sense. It makes sense since he's still not just one of the oldest mutants, but also one of the oldest superheroes in the MCU. According to the comics, he was born in 1832 and has been able to live a weirdly long life because of his healing mutation. Since mutants already exist in the MCU and recent films have further established that super soldier experiments did continue after the US lost Steve Rogers in World War II, it leaves quite a small amount of dots to connect for something related to Weapon X. Adding the character as someone who's been working in the background all along might end up being what they go for. Before meeting Professor X, he believed that he couldn't ever make a difference in the world and never considered himself a superhero. According to the storyline in the original Sin comics, he was rather sent on a mission to kill the professor, who ended up wiping out his memory, rewriting his entire personality, and turned him into a hero. Though his reaction when he found out about this was quite surprising, as he was grateful for X's actions that ended up making him into a better person, we've got to assume he simply hasn't met anyone willing to commit to turning him into a superhero yet, at least in the MCU. Hopefully, it won't be a long time till they announce more details on him. It seems unreal that they would tease the character so much without a solid plan for bringing him on screen with a bang. That's a wrap for this video. How do you think Wolverine should be introduced into the MCU? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.